everyone, and welcome back to English Pod. My name is Marco.
And my name is Catherine. So, Marco, what are we talking about here today?
Today, we're going shopping again.
We go shopping a lot here in English Pod, but this is an upper intermediate level lesson,
Right.
so we've got some very specific terminology to cover.
Exactly. We're going shopping for a digital camera, so we're going to be talking about very specific, maybe a little bit technical vocab related to this very fascinating and expensive product.
All right, I'm very excited. I recently purchased a camera, but we won't talk about that yet. Let's take a listen to the dialogue for the first time, and when we come back, we can talk about some of the really interesting details.
Hello, ma'am. Can I help you find something?
Yes, actually, I'm looking to buy a camera.
We've got a wide selection. Do you know if you'd like a point and shoot or something a little fancier? Are you shopping for yourself or for someone else?
Actually, I'm buying a camera for my husband.
Ah, well then I'd recommend a nice entry-level digital SLR.
Yeah? Can I take a look at the SLRs you carry?
Sure thing, follow me. This here is
The Canon EOS. Yeah, it's okay, but I'm looking for something that performs better in low light, has a better display panel, and longer battery life.
The Nikon D60 is a nice option?
Yeah, but what kit lens does this camera come with? I don't want some bulky telephoto lens.
Well, this one has the,
Looks to me like an 18 to 55mm lens. Pretty standard. That'll do. Not like my husband will be stalking celebrities or anything.
can I interest you in any
Accessories? Do you carry polarizing filters?
polarizing filters? We should. I'm sorry, ma'am. Looks like we're sold out.
No, you're not. There are some right here.
Oh, well, would you look at that? Polarizing.
Like I said, but there are some very important words that anyone who wants to buy a camera should know before they go into the store. And these are common across the board. So let's take a look at these in today's language takeaway.
Language takeaway.
All right, so in language takeaway today, we have our first difference. Now, it's very important to know the difference between point-and-shoot camera and the digital SLR.
Okay, so digital, everyone knows digital now, right? That's the kind of photography we have. You don't use film, okay? It uses a memory card to record digital images. But point and shoot are those little cameras where you just click and it takes a picture. There's no lens, there's no additional lens, there's no special add-ons. It's a small rectangle and you just take normal pictures. And that's the kind of camera that like my mom uses.
Like
and that, like,
everyone usually
I have it
has
in my
those.
purse and whatever. It's just easy to use. But the digital SLR is a kind of camera that's like the old SLR where you have an attachment of you have a body and you have a lens and they're just much fancier and you have to do a lot more on your own to make a nice picture.
Now, SLR, that's an acronym. Do you know what it stands for?
So an SLR is a single lens reflex camera, and that means that there's a lot more you have to do as the photographer to make sure that the picture comes out well.
Right, so it's really interesting because you can actually play with the lens, like the focus and, how much light you want to allow it to go in. And there's a lot of really, sometimes a little bit difficult things that not many people understand.
Exactly, and so I think that's why it's good to do some research before you buy one because there's so many differences across the different cameras.
Okay, now both on digital SLRs and on point-and-shoot cameras, you have something that's called a display panel.
That's right. So a display panel is usually covered in plastic, and it's the area that tells you how many pictures you've taken, how many pictures you can take, if the flash is on, if you're doing an automatic setting. So it's like the little computer monitor that tells you what's going on with the camera.
Usually after you take a picture, you can also see how it came out, right? In that moment.
Exactly. And so a lot of times with these fancy cameras, you want to know how big the display panel is, and how good the quality is in the display panel. Because obviously if you take a picture and it shows up bad in the display panel, you want to take a new one. But
Right.
what if it's the display panel that's broken?
Right. Okay, very good. And that's actually one of the great advantages of digital cameras, that you can actually see how your picture looks like
Exactly.
in
It's
that moment.
instant gratification.
Nice. All right. Now, when she was looking to buy this digital SLR, she mentioned something about a kit lens.
Okay, this is fancy camera terminology, right? Because if you buy a point and shoot, there's no lens. It's just the camera. But if you're buying a fancy digital SLR, you can buy the body, which means the machine, but there's no lens. So normally stores will sell cameras with a kit lens. That means they make a kit, or they make a combination for you.
So it's the body and the lens.
Exactly.
But if you want, you can buy the body and the lens separate. Maybe you want a really fancy lens.
Exactly. So what's the kind of fancy lens we might buy?
A telephoto lens.
Ooh, so these are the really big lenses for super close-up shots from a distance, right? So you think of maybe professional photographers or photojournalists who have these kind of lenses. They're big and they're bulky and they're not
Right.
for traveling.
Usually you see them in like sporting events, right? They're on the side of the field and they have these big white, they're usually white lenses on their cameras. So you can actually take a very close picture of the action that's far away.
Exactly. And it's really good for those kind of things where you have action or where you're trying to get close-ups.
And now if one of these accessories that could go well with a telephoto lens or any digital SLR is a polarizing filter.
Okay, so filter is something that takes certain elements out of something else. So we can filter coffee, for example, and it takes the coffee grounds out and leaves the water. But in a camera, a polarizing filter is something we put onto the glass of the lens to change the way that light goes into the lens.
Okay. So in this way, you take a picture maybe of a very sunny day and it will look differently if you didn't have this filter.
Exactly. And you can also have a UV filter, which does similar things with UV rays in the sunlight. And these are just filters or things you put on the camera, and polarizing means that you're splitting up, right, the kind of light that goes in.
Okay, very good. Very technical terms, and but they're very useful, especially if you're looking to buy one of these cameras and you're not very familiar with the terms. But why don't we move on now to some very interesting phrases that we saw in the dialogue on Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
All right, so on Fluency Builder, our first phrase today is entry level. What's an entry level digital SLR?
Okay, well, entry level is something that we can use for any kind of purchase, so any kind of thing that we buy. In the case of a camera, an entry level is not for an expert or professional. It's something for someone who's buying one for the first time.
So like for beginners.
For beginners. So entry level is like entry, beginning, starting. We can have an entry level job where you don't need training or experience, right?
Okay.
An entry level camera where you don't need long experience with fancy cameras.
Or training
Exactly.
to know how to use it. Okay, very good. So that's an entry level camera, but as you mentioned, we can also use it for the job, an entry level job position. All right, what about our second phrase?
Okay, so this one goes with the telephoto lens, right? She says, I don't need a telephoto lens. My husband doesn't need a telephoto lens. It's not like he's going to be stalking celebrities.
Okay, so we have this verb here, to stalk.
To stalk, that means to follow someone around.
Okay.
And to look at them and to watch them and to not leave them alone.
Now, she mentioned this because this is a very, very interesting and closely associated topic with photographers. You know, you have the paparazzi who follow celebrities and they have these big telephoto lens so they can take pictures of celebrities without them knowing.
Exactly. And so you imagine someone in a tree with a big telephoto lens taking a photo of someone famous who's, half a mile away. And stalking celebrities is something that's a bad thing, right?
Yeah, it's bad.
But it's
and
very
also
common.
illegal, I think.
And I think it's illegal. Yeah.
All right. And what about our last phrase?
Would you look at that?
Well, he said it in a very surprised tone, right? Kind of like he didn't really expect to find the polarizing filters.
Right, so he's embarrassed, okay? Would you look at that means, oh, wow, I'm surprised.
Right.
Right, so it's awkward, right? So you could say, Marco, you got a little bit of food on your shirt. You've had it for like an hour.
Oh my God! Would you look at that? Oh, the
That's
beans
really-
I had
That's really embarrassing. I've got food on my, right?
on my shirt.
So this man who works at the store, he's embarrassed because he didn't know something he should know.
Okay.
And so he says, "Oh, would you look at that? How funny. I didn't see those."
Now we can also maybe use it in a sarcastic tone, right? If I tell somebody, "Can you bring me my glasses that are on the table?" And they're like, "I can't find them. They're not here." And then I find them. Would you look at that? Here they are, right?
On your head the whole time. That's my mom. Would you look at that? I was wearing my glasses the whole time.
All right, very good. So why don't we listen to the dialogue for the last time, and we'll be back to talk about digital SLRs.
Hello, ma'am. Can I help you find something?
Yes, actually, I'm looking to buy a camera.
We've got a wide selection. Do you know if you'd like a point and shoot or something a little fancier? Are you shopping for yourself or for someone else?
Actually, I'm buying a camera for my husband.
Ah, well then I'd recommend a nice entry-level digital SLR.
Yeah? Can I take a look at the SLRs you carry?
Sure thing, follow me. This here is
The Canon EOS. Yeah, it's okay, but I'm looking for something that performs better in low light, has a better display panel, and longer battery life.
The Nikon D60 is a nice option?
Yeah, but what kit lens does this camera come with? I don't want some bulky telephoto lens.
Well, this one has the,
Looks to me like an 18 to 55mm lens. Pretty standard. That'll do. Not like my husband will be stalking celebrities or anything.
can I interest you in any
Accessories? Do you carry polarizing filters?
polarizing filters? We should. I'm sorry, ma'am. Looks like we're sold out.
No, you're not. There are some right here.
Oh, well, would you look at that? Polarizing filters.
Thanks for your help, Ralph.
No problem, ma'am.
All right, we're back. So you mentioned you recently bought a digital SLR camera. How's that working out?
I'm loving it. I have to actually train myself on how to use it because I used to have an old film camera that had it was actually a Nikon as well, and it's different using a digital SLR. There's a lot of things you can do that are very fancy because you actually there's a computer inside essentially. So it's I'm getting used to it. It's fun.
And what about the difference in pictures, like from a point and shoot to a digital SLR? Does it really make a great difference? Are you very happy with it?
There is a big difference, and part of the difference is that you can control every aspect of the photo, okay? So my digital camera was a small little Canon, you know, the little, what are they called? The power shoot? And it took great pictures because, you know, these cameras have amazing pixel quality, right? They have like 7.1 megapixels
Right.
or like 9.1 megapixels. So the quality is really good, but everything looks the same. If I have my digital camera, my digital SLR, I can frame a shot and I can focus on one person but make everyone else blurry.
Yeah,
I can really make more artistic photos, whereas the point and shoot is great for parties and for
Just like everyday stuff.
Everyday stuff, exactly.
Now, what about traveling? You have a dilemma there, right? Because you visit very beautiful places where you would love to take very nice pictures with a digital SLR, but at the same time, the inconvenience of it, because they're pretty big, all of them are pretty big. So where would you go on that? Would you use the point and shoot or the digital SLR?
Well, that's a good question. One of the reasons that I picked the lens that I did is because it's not immense. But I really want to be able to do some like landscape photography, and I travel a lot, so I think it's worthwhile to suck it up and just take the camera because otherwise, why did you buy it, right?
Yeah, that's true. All right, so an interesting topic here on English Pod, and I'm sure a lot of our users travel around, like to take pictures, or maybe are experts on digital photography. So why don't you come to the website englishpod.com? We'll see you there, and until next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Any compact, non-SLR camera with non-interchangeable lenses, using automatic settings and simplified controls, generally desired by novices and casual users. Point and shoot. Try to persuade someone to buy, do, or eat something. Interest someone in. A transparent optical device used to converge or diverge transmitted light and to form images. Lens. A camera lens filter used to control the plane of polarization of light entering the lens. Polarizing filter. Simple and appropriate to an inexperienced person. Entry level.
Let's try that faster.
Simple and appropriate to an inexperienced person. Entry level. A camera lens filter used to control the plane of polarization of light entering the lens. Polarizing filter.
Welcome to my channel.
And this is a podcast Speak English.
Hello everyone and welcome back to English Pod. My name is Marco.
My name is Catherine, and today we're talking about buying clothes.
That's right, we're gonna go and get some clothes, but on this occasion, we are going to get a suit and we're gonna have it made especially for us. So before we get started, why don't we take a look at one keyword that we have in Vocabulary Preview.
Vocabulary Preview.
Okay, this word makes me think of things that are very rich and soft.
It's a fabric, right?
That's right, it's a kind of textile. It's called cashmere.
Cashmere.
So maybe you've heard of cashmere wool. It's a special kind of wool that comes from animals.
So this is a textile or a fabric that is commonly used to make pants, nice pants or suits for men.
Or scarves or sweaters. You've ever had a cashmere sweater, you know it's very luxurious, very soft.
So it can be a little bit expensive depending on the quality, and that's what we're going to be looking at now. We're going to be making a suit out of cashmere. So why don't we listen to our dialogue for the first time?
Welcome to Bill's Fabric World. What can I do for you today?
I was wondering if you guys also tailor clothes.
Sure we do. We have the best tailors in the country. What is it that you need exactly?
Well, I'm looking to get a custom-made suit.
Excellent. We have the finest cashmeres at affordable prices. How about we get you measured? Let's start off by measuring the width of your shoulders. Now, let's measure the length of your arms and this bit around your neck here.
Can you make sure you leave a little extra space in the collar? My neck gets easily irritated.
No problem. Now for your pants, let me just measure your waist and the inseam.
You might also want to leave a little extra room in the waist area. I tend to gain a few pounds over the holidays.
Okay. Now you can pick your fabric and pattern design. Please follow me.
So this reminds me of something that people used to do a lot more often. So you go to the tailor and you'd have some clothes made. Most people don't do this anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's actually really interesting. Maybe because it's more expensive nowadays, or tailors are harder to find.
That's right. So let's learn about the words first and what they mean, and then maybe we can talk about this at the end of today's show.
Language takeaway.
All right, so today on Language Takeaway, we have a word that is a noun and a verb. So as you mentioned, the person that makes suits is a tailor.
That's right. You can say, my uncle is a tailor. He makes clothes for famous people. But this word is also a verb. That means it's an action word. We can say, my uncle, the tailor, he tailors clothes.
Okay, so to tailor clothes. And what does it mean when you say to tailor?
Well, it can have two meanings. The first is what we learn about in today's dialogue. It means to make clothes. So to make a shirt or to make a pair of pants. But these days we often say to tailor, which means to fix something. So, for example, Marco, if you buy a pair of pants and they're too long,
Right.
you can have them tailored.
You have them tailored. And that means that I am going to have them fixed so they fit me properly.
Exactly. This is a lot more common right now.
Okay, so we're going to be tailoring clothes. Now, if any of you have ever been to the tailor, what they do is they measure you. And what do they measure? Well, in this case, they get the width of your shoulders.
Well, what's really great about these upcoming words is that they're useful in math as well, math and just basic measurements. So width is how big something is across.
Across, so how wide something is.
Exactly, wide, width.
Okay, so that's the width. Now, your shoulders, they are wide, and, well, your legs, on the other hand, your legs and arms, you don't measure the width. Usually you measure the length.
How long they are.
Okay, so width and length. Now, just to throw it in there, this wasn't in the dialogue, but what would be the other measure word?
So the third word would be height. So you think of a rectangle, you have the width, how wide something is, the length, how long it is, and the height, how tall it is.
How tall it is, right. So width, length, and height. All right. Now that we've measured our arms and legs, now we want to measure our waist.
Okay, this is the important one. This is also the sensitive one. If you find out you've gained some weight, we measure the waist. Okay, that's how big you are around your stomach. And so usually we measure this in a circle.
Okay.
Okay, so you've heard of a 26-inch waist or a 32-inch waist. This is the size of your stomach.
Okay, so it's just above your hips, right? As you say, it's your stomach. And, well, we measured the waist, and now in men especially, they measure the inseam. Now, this is very particular for tailors and having suits made. What is the inseam of your pants?
Well, think of the word inside. This is the inside of your pants. So from your foot to the middle of your pants where your zipper starts.
Okay.
So that's not the outside length, it's the inside length, okay?
Now, for example, skirts, they don't have inseams, right?
No, because there's no inside, there's no middle, right? So it's just like a circle.
Okay.
But in pants or shorts, you have an inseam. That's where it's connected in the middle.
All right, so also in shorts, very interesting. So you can measure the inseam of pants or shorts. All right, so very interesting and particular words for tailors. Why don't we listen to our dialogue again, and we'll be back shortly.
Welcome to Bill's Fabric World. What can I do for you today?
I was wondering if you guys also tailor clothes.
Sure we do. We have the best tailors in the country. What is it that you need exactly?
Well, I'm looking to get a custom-made suit.
Excellent. We have the finest cashmeres at affordable prices. How about we get you measured? Let's start off by measuring the width of your shoulders. Now, let's measure the length of your arms and this bit around your neck here.
Can you make sure you leave a little extra space in the collar? My neck gets easily irritated.
No problem. Now for your pants, let me just measure your waist and the inseam.
You might also want to leave a little extra room in the waist area. I tend to gain a few pounds over the holidays.
Okay. Now you can pick your fabric and pattern design. Please follow me.
All right, we're back. So now we have 3 key phrases that we found in this dialogue. So let's take a look at them now in Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
This first phrase is the topic of today's lesson. Well, we talked a little bit about measurements for a suit, but in particular, we're getting a custom-made suit.
Okay, so this word custom-made.
Well, custom is important. It means special or unique. There's no other like it. So we could talk about custom cars. That means a car that has been fixed especially for you.
Okay, so a custom-made suit would be a suit that was made specifically for your height, for how big your waist is, etc., specifically for you.
Right, so a suit that I buy at the department store is just a normal suit, but a suit that I have made for me is a custom-made suit.
Okay, and as you said, you can use it for cars, a custom-made car, or maybe, for example, a custom-made
kitchen. That means that you get to pick every single part of the kitchen that you want.
Many people do that, right? They have custom-built or custom-made homes.
Yeah, that's always something I've wanted to do, but I hear that it's much more expensive than getting a normal homemade.
All right, so that's the first key phrase. Now, moving on, when we talk about measuring, we say, I measured the length of this street.
Right, or let's measure you so we can see how big you are.
But if you noticed in the dialogue, we use the passive voice. He says, let's get you measured.
Okay, I got measured, or it got measured. To get measured, as you say, is the passive voice. Now, what's the difference between passive and active?
All right. So basically what happens here is we are concentrating on the person and the action falling upon you, for example. So I got measured. What happened to me? I got measured.
Who did it? Who measured you? We don't know.
We don't know. We don't care, right?
All right. The important part is that you were measured. You got measured. But we could have a different phrase. We say, for example, I will measure this table, or he measures the height of the door. And we know he measures.
Right.
I will measure. We know who the actor is. That means it's active voice because the focus is on who's doing this action. But in passive voice, the important thing is who is receiving the action.
Right. Now, it's a little bit complicated because, as you can see, measured is in the past, but we're not really talking about the past, so it may get a little bit complicated. We can take a more in-depth look at that in the community section. You can ask a couple questions. We'll place a couple of examples, but it's kind of hard to get into the grammar over an audio podcast, right?
That's true. So that's why we have the practice space on the website.
All right. Now, moving on, we have our last phrase. And when he was talking about the waist and how he should leave a little bit of extra room, it's because he tends to gain a few pounds.
Okay, so to gain a few pounds is like gaining a kilo. It means to gain weight over the holidays. And in this case, I tend to means I normally or I usually. So for example, Marco, what do you tend to eat for breakfast?
I tend to eat scrambled eggs and a glass of yogurt.
That's healthy. Do you tend to run late in the morning?
Yes.
True.
Right? So tend to, it's a tendency is what usually happens.
It's normal.
It's normal. All right. So very interesting phrases, very interesting words. Why don't we listen to our dialogue for the last time?
Welcome to Bill's Fabric World. What can I do for you today?
I was wondering if you guys also tailor clothes.
Sure we do. We have the best tailors in the country. What is it that you need exactly?
Well, I'm looking to get a custom-made suit.
Excellent. We have the finest cashmeres at affordable prices. How about we get you measured? Let's start off by measuring the width of your shoulders. Now, let's measure the length of your arms and this bit around your neck here.
Can you make sure you leave a little extra space in the collar? My neck gets easily irritated.
No problem. Now for your pants, let me just measure your waist and the inseam.
You might also want to leave a little extra room in the waist area. I tend to gain a few pounds over the holidays.
Okay. Now you can pick your fabric and pattern design. Please follow me.
All right. So we talked earlier about how most people buy their clothes at a department store or a clothing store. Have you seen much of this? You know, maybe back in Ecuador, it's more common than in America.
Yeah, usually people just go to a department store and get suits, for example, but it's actually very common as well because it's kind of they're artisans to be like a shoemaker or to be a tailor. So actually people like it more and go to tailors because they kind of become renowned. Like, oh, he used to make suits for the president. So, you know, people really, really like to get suits made there. And obviously they fit much better. You feel more comfortable.
And you look better.
Yeah.
As I've said before, you know, I see people who buy all these suits. My brother, for example, they never quite fit right.
Yeah.
You can tell it's a little too big in the shoulders. My brother's tall, so his pants are always a little bit too short. But when you come to a place like China and most people can get these suits made for them, they just look fabulous.
It looks very, very nice. Yeah, so maybe you guys can tell us if you've ever had anything tailor-made. Not only guys' suits, but girls also get tailor-made dresses, tailor-made blouses.
I always get coats made, actually, because my shoulders are broad, and so it's hard for me to find coats that fit right. But if I get one custom-made, it looks really good.
Right. So come to our website, englishpod.com, leave your questions and comments there, and we'll see you guys later.
Until next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Made especially for the needs of one person. Custom made. To ascertain the dimensions, quantity. Measure. Be sure. Make sure. Be more likely. Tend. An artistic or decorative design that repeats. Pattern design.
Let's try that faster.
An artistic or decorative design that repeats. Pattern design. Be sure. Make sure. Be more likely. Tend. Made especially for the needs of one person. Custom made. To ascertain the dimensions, quantity. Measure.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Custom made. Brad got a custom-made motorcycle. It looks amazing. Custom-made. I want to get a custom-made sports car. Custom-made. Her dress was custom-made in Italy. Measure. I need to measure the length of this street. Measure. Help me measure the width of this box. Measure. Many people tried to measure the diameter of the earth. Make sure. Make sure you make some extra food just in case. Make sure. Please make sure you leave the door unlocked. Make sure. Can you make sure those reports are done by the end of this week? Tend. Don't buy cheap things. They tend to break easily. Tend. I always tend to forget my keys in my car. Tend. People tend to forget what happened in the past. Pattern design. This flower pattern for my dress looks really nice. Pattern design. I bought wallpaper that has a black and red circle pattern. Pattern design. I want a simple and elegant dress pattern.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Pod. My name is Marco.
My name is Catherine, and today we've got an upper intermediate level lesson for you all about money.
That's right. We are trading money. We're actually negotiating in this very popular topic nowadays, the whole foreign exchange market.
Okay, so we're talking about currency, which is the money of different countries. For example, the currency of Ecuador is?
The US dollar. Yeah. Hard to believe, but true. I'll tell you all about it later.
Okay. Well, the currency of America is also the US dollar. So with that in mind, let's listen to today's dialogue.
Hey, John. I haven't seen you in ages. What's new? What have you been up to?
Pete, nice to see you. Well, on top of the norm, wife and kids and work, I've actually gotten into doing some trading.
Trading? You, big guy? What are you trading?
Currencies.
Currencies? As in euros, dollars, pounds, and rupees?
It's called Forex, foreign exchange. The great thing about it is that I don't have to invest a huge amount. I put in a margin deposit and then I can buy and sell up to 100 times that much.
I don't understand. You're buying and selling money?
You got it. Just last night I made $150.
Last night?
Yeah, it's a 24-hour market. I'd bought some renminbi earlier at a low asking price, but last night it appreciated drastically. So I made a split-second decision and sold all of my RMB at an amazing bid. I've also done some trading with Swiss francs and Australian dollars and Hong Kong dollars. I've made some good profits, but I've also suffered some losses. It depends on a lot of factors, just like any other market. In total, I've made about $500 in the past few months.
You're kidding! I'm on. Where do I sign up? All right, we're back. So this guy is trading currencies, as we heard. And, well, we're going to talk about a lot of the specific vocab that he used about this topic. So why don't we take a look at some of those now in Language Takeaway.
Language takeaway.
Well, the first thing I think we should talk about is one of the first things that he says, actually. Peter says, I haven't seen you in ages.
I haven't seen you in ages, right. So, obviously, he hasn't seen him in a long time, and that's what in ages means.
That's right. So, we haven't seen each other in ages.
Mm-hmm. So, what other ways can we use in ages, or the word ages?
Well, you could actually say, it's been ages.
So that means it's been a long time.
It's been a long time, or we haven't gone out for ages.
Okay, so then you can use it with for ages.
For ages, in ages. So the key word here is ages, which means a long time.
Long time. Okay. And, well, he hasn't seen him in ages, and the guy's like, well, you know what? I've actually gone into trading.
So that means he started doing some trading.
Right. Now, trading is a very broad word because you can trade, as in this case, currencies, which is basically to buy and sell currencies.
But you could also trade stocks, right?
Mm-hmm. You can trade stocks, or even people that are involved in import-export. They are involved in trading.
Trading. So basically, trading is buying and selling something.
Right. So you're trading. You are exchanging a product for money, or money for a product.
But the difference is you're not actually making any products.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's called trading. You're not really manufacturing anything. You're just exchanging goods and services and money. All right. So that's for trading. Now, moving on, he was explaining how the foreign exchange market works. And he says, I don't have to invest a huge amount. I put in a margin deposit, and then I can buy and sell up to 100 times that much.
So, Marco, here's the question. What is a margin deposit? Because a deposit is basically money that you invest somewhere, or that you pay in.
Right. Well, basically, a margin deposit is like a percentage. So he basically puts in a percentage of what he intends to buy. So, for example, a margin deposit of $1,000 might be $1 or $10.
Okay, so maybe if it's $10, you're talking about a 1% margin.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's what he means by a margin deposit, and that's why he explains that you don't have to have a large amount of money in order to trade in the foreign exchange market. You just put in a margin deposit, and then you can work around that.
Well, it sounds pretty easy, but then he explains some more details about it, and it gets to be a little bit more complicated.
That's right. He explained about how he makes money and how he bought some Chinese renminbi, and then he sold it because it appreciated drastically.
So he bought it when it was cheap, and he sold it when it was expensive. So the price changed.
Right.
So this kind of price change, when something goes from cheap to expensive, it's called appreciating. Appreciation. So the verb is to appreciate.
It's very different from using it in the sense of you appreciate someone, right? Like, oh, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no, it's very different. We could say this about most goods or investments. For example, my parents bought a house in 1970, and the value of the house has really appreciated over the last 40 years. So now the value is much, much greater.
And actually, just mentioning it while we're on the topic, to appreciate, as you say, is something becomes more expensive. The opposite, when something becomes cheaper or maybe the value goes down, is to depreciate.
Depreciate. So that D at the beginning means it's going down.
Right. Okay, and moving on to our last word for language takeaway. So when he was talking about selling the Chinese currency, he said that he sold it at an amazing bid.
Okay, let's talk about bid here. B-I-D, bid. What does this mean?
So to bid is to place an offer for something.
Okay, so for example, at an auction, when someone is selling many old objects or some art, I can bid $100.
Right.
And maybe someone doesn't accept my bid. But if they do accept my bid, then I pay for it.
Right. So basically a bid is just another way of saying an offer. You're offering a certain amount of money for that product or that service. And you see it a lot, for example, on eBay, right?
That's right. So eBay is an auction website, basically. And someone who's selling someone can see many, many bids, and they select the best bid.
Exactly. So that's what a bid is. So that's all we have for language takeaway. Let's move on now to Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
Marco, what have you been up to lately? I never see you.
All right. This is actually a very common sentence. What have you been up to? But most English learners don't really understand what it means.
Well, this is a really interesting point because I say this all the time. This is very native, very colloquial. What have you been up to?
It's almost the same as saying, what's up?
What's up? Or where have you been recently? What have you been doing recently?
Right.
How's your life?
Right. So this part, up to, what have you been up to? It doesn't really say much if you translate it literally. But basically it's, what have you been doing? What have you been spending your time on?
So to be up to means to do something, to do.
Right. And there are many other definitions of up to, but in this case, what have you been up to means that. What have you been doing?
So next time you see a friend you haven't seen in a week or two, you can say, what have you been up to?
All right. And John answers, well, you know, on top of the norm, wife, kids, and work. That phrase right there, on top of the norm.
Well, the norm here means the normal. That means basically normal life. I've been working, I've got my kids, my wife, on top of the norm. Just life is normal.
Right. So the norm are the wife, kids, and work. On top of that, I'm actually getting into trading, right? So the normal situation, the normal life is wife, kids, and work. And then he's saying, on top of that, I've actually been doing this.
Exactly.
Okay. And now moving on to when he's explaining, again, the market and the currencies, he talked about an asking price.
Okay, asking price. This is, remember we were talking about bids? We could say that someone has an asking price, which is the price they would like to receive for an object or a service that they are selling. And so, for example, I'm going to sell my desk. My asking price is $100, $100. Maybe you don't want to pay that much, but my asking price is the way that I'm going to start. That's how much I want for it.
Right. So that's your asking price. That's how much you ideally want to sell it for, but you can negotiate. You are willing to accept maybe a lower offer.
Exactly.
Okay. And what is our last phrase?
A split-second decision. This is really, really important. These words go together very often. Split second and decision.
Okay. So that basically means that you made a very quick decision.
That's right. Split second. Very fast. It's almost like it's less than a second. And so a split-second decision means a decision in no time. It's very, very quick.
So we can actually mix split second with other things, right? For example, so maybe you can say he reacted in a split second and avoided the crash.
Okay, so good for him. He reacted quickly enough to avoid the accident.
That's right. So split second, very fast, very quickly. A split second decision, a decision that was made very fast. Okay, so that's all we have for Fluency Builder. Why don't we go back, listen to this dialogue one more time, and we'll be back to talk a little bit more. Hey, John. I haven't seen you in ages. What's new? What have you been up to?
Pete, nice to see you. Well, on top of the norm, you know, wife and kids and work, I've actually gotten into doing some trading.
Trading? You, big guy? What are you trading?
Currencies.
Currencies? As in euros, dollars, pounds, and rupees?
It's called Forex, foreign exchange. The great thing about it is that I don't have to invest a huge amount. I put in a margin deposit and then I can buy and sell up to 100 times that much.
I don't understand. You're buying and selling money?
You got it. Just last night I made $150.
Last night?
Yeah, it's a 24-hour market. I'd bought some renminbi earlier at a low asking price, but last night it appreciated drastically. So I made a split-second decision and sold all of my RMB at an amazing bid. I've also done some trading with Swiss francs and Australian dollars and Hong Kong dollars. I've made some good profits, but I've also suffered some losses. It depends on a lot of factors, just like any other market. In total, I've made about $500 in the past few months.
You're kidding! I'm on. Where do I sign up?
So, Marco, you have to explain this to me. We're talking about currency today. So every nation has a currency. For example, in the dialogue, we learned that India has rupees.
Pounds are in Britain.
Britain has pounds, and Australia has Australian dollars. America has American dollars. But you just said earlier that Ecuador has American dollars too.
That's right. Actually, Ecuador went through a very difficult economic situation in late 1998, early 1999, where there was hyperinflation. So basically, there was an inflation that was very, very, very large.
So that means that the old currency lost its value very fast.
Exactly. So, for example, if the currency before in Ecuador used to be sucres. So if 10 sucres was $1, all of a sudden it was 50 sucres was $1.
Oh, wow.
So, and it got to the point where goods and services went from 3,000 to $1 to 25,000 to $1.
Oh, okay. So people have bags full of money and it's not really worth anything anymore.
Exactly. So what happened was the central bank couldn't absorb this currency depreciation. They couldn't really regulate prices. Obviously, salaries were about the same, so you have a lot less money comparatively. And so the government decided that there were two options. Either they would follow Argentina's example, what they did a couple of years before, and set a fixed rate. So in Argentina, it's 3 pesos to $1. Or we would just get rid of our currency and just use US dollars.
So that's what they did, right?
They use US dollars, and now if you ever travel to Ecuador, you will use US dollars. The same exact bills that you use in the US are the same exact bills in Ecuador.
So no need to exchange currency.
No need to exchange currency, and that's why I guess there are many factors that people say are a lot better. For example, trading has become a lot less complicated because now you're negotiating in US dollars as in everywhere else in the world. But then other things, as you know, not having a national currency also affect. So there are a lot of things going on, but it's an interesting topic.
Very interesting. Well, so maybe for those of you who are listening, you could tell us about your country and your currency. What do you use? What do you spend money on? And do people buy and trade currencies where you're from?
Exactly. Or maybe you can even enlighten us with with the exchange rate. Maybe usually it's a good question to ask, how much is a liter of milk? Or how much is a haircut?
Right, because these are things that everyone needs, so the price doesn't change that much.
Exactly. We're really curious to know how inexpensive or maybe very expensive your country is. The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Something is usual or expected. Norm. The money that a country uses. Currency. The sum of money required to reinstate. Margin deposit. Taking effect rapidly. Drastically. Very quickly, just a second. Split second. An offer to pay a particular amount of money. Bid.
Let's try that faster.
The sum of money required to reinstate. Margin deposit. Something is usual or expected. Norm. Very quickly, just a second. Split second. An offer to pay a particular amount of money. Bid. Taking effect rapidly. Drastically. The money that a country uses. Currency.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Norm. What's the norm in this company concerning protocol? Norm. This is the norm, so you'd better get used to it. Norm. Delivery, McDonald's, and street vendors are the norms around here. Currency. Before I went to France, I had to change some of my Canadian currency into euros. Currency. What's the currency in this country? Currency. My country's currency is worth next to nothing in USD. Margin deposit. He decided to start with a margin deposit of GBP 100. Margin deposit. I can't believe that I can trade with USD 1 million deposit when I've only put in a margin deposit of USD 10,000. Margin deposit. One has to be careful with trading using a margin deposit because the risk of losing more money than one has are high. Split second. The gang members were closing in on me fast, so I made a split-second decision to run instead of fight. Split second. My heart pounded as I made a split-second decision and took hold of her hand. Split second. My split-second decision to try a trick on my bicycle in order to impress my friends didn't end well. Bid. The current bid ask for EUR USD is 1.3998-79. Bid. I bought euros at an ask of $1.4235 and sold British pounds at a bid of $1.5001. Bid. The bid for Japanese yen and the ask for Hong Kong dollars are really good right now if you trade in US currency.
The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Something is usual or expected. Norm. The money that a country uses. Currency. The sum of money required to reinstate. Margin deposit. Taking effect rapidly. Drastically. Very quickly, just a second. Split second. An offer to pay a particular amount of money. Bid.
Let's try that faster.
The sum of money required to reinstate. Margin deposit. Something is usual or expected. Norm. Very quickly, just a second. Split second. An offer to pay a particular amount of money. Bid. Taking effect rapidly. Drastically. The money that a country uses. Currency.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Norm. What's the norm in this company concerning protocol? Norm. This is the norm, so you'd better get used to it. Norm. Delivery, McDonald's, and street vendors are the norms around here. Currency. Before I went to France, I had to change some of my Canadian currency into euros. Currency. What's the currency in this country? Currency. My country's currency is worth next to nothing in USD. Margin deposit. He decided to start with a margin deposit of GBP 100. Margin deposit. I can't believe that I can trade with USD 1 million deposit when I've only put in a margin deposit of USD 10,000. Margin deposit. One has to be careful with trading using a margin deposit because the risk of losing more money than one has are high. Split second. The gang members were closing in on me fast, so I made a split-second decision to run instead of fight. Split second. My heart pounded as I made a split-second decision and took hold of her hand. Split second. My split-second decision to try a trick on my bicycle in order to impress my friends didn't end well. Bid. The current bid ask for EUR USD is 1.3998-79. Bid. I bought euros at an ask of $1.4235 and sold British pounds at a bid of $1.5001. Bid. The bid for Japanese yen and the ask for Hong Kong dollars are really good right now if you trade in US currency.
The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Something is usual or expected. Norm. The money that a country uses. Currency. The sum of money required to reinstate. Margin deposit. Taking effect rapidly. Drastically. Very quickly, just a second. Split second. An offer to pay a particular amount of money. Bid.
Let's try that faster.
The sum of money required to reinstate. Margin deposit. Something is usual or expected. Norm. Very quickly, just a second. Split second. An offer to pay a particular amount of money. Bid. Taking effect rapidly. Drastically. The money that a country uses. Currency.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Norm. What's the norm in this company concerning protocol? Norm. This is the norm, so you'd better get used to it. Norm. Delivery, McDonald's, and street vendors are the norms around here. Currency. Before I went to France, I had to change some of my Canadian currency into euros. Currency. What's the currency in this country? Currency. My country's currency is worth next to nothing in USD. Margin deposit. He decided to start with a margin deposit of GBP 100. Margin deposit. I can't believe that I can trade with USD 1 million deposit when I've only put in a margin deposit of USD 10,000. Margin deposit. One has to be careful with trading using a margin deposit because the risk of losing more money than one has are high. Split second. The gang members were closing in on me fast, so I made a split-second decision to run instead of fight. Split second. My heart pounded as I made a split-second decision and took hold of her hand. Split second. My split-second decision to try a trick on my bicycle in order to impress my friends didn't end well. Bid. The current bid ask for EUR USD is 1.3998-79. Bid. I bought euros at an ask of $1.4235 and sold British pounds at a bid of $1.5001. Bid. The bid for Japanese yen and the ask for Hong Kong dollars are really good right now if you trade in US currency.